Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood. Vicky Midwood even, do I know who I am this morning? I am a behavioural therapist and I'm an integrative health coach and consultant to help people understand more about how they think, feel and function so that they can feel better and live the life that they want to live, not the one that they think they should. Now, this is a topic that is something that crops up time and time again. And I have done different podcast episodes touching on this, but not perhaps quite in the same way as today's. And this is an important topic because as we are getting into a different era, because I don't know about you, but I'm sure you can feel that everything is changing and it's changing fast. We haven't really experienced anything like this in terms of how technology and how the world is just so different everywhere you turn. Certainly not in my lifetime, and I don't think in my parents' or even my grandparents' lifetime either. And so this is something that I think is becoming more and more important, especially if you have children or grandchildren. So if that is you, listen up. You may want to take some notes. You may want to save this and re-listen to it because this is important stuff. I'm going to be talking about the lie that we learn as children about other people's emotions and the hidden ego behind people pleasing. Now, some of you already might feel triggered by just that title because it gives you a clue of what I'm talking about. But as I say, it has come up a lot this week because really we've got a pandemic, an epidemic of people who are absolutely mentally exhausted because they are constantly trying to manage other people's feelings. And I saw it yet again this week with 3 of my clients worrying about, how did I come across? I don't want them to think badly of me. Oh my God, I don't want them to be upset. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable. Oh my goodness me, what if they think I'm selfish? And I don't want to feel rejected or rude or blunt. Now, most people think that this is just being kind, but actually it's anxiety. And underneath that anxiety is usually a powerful belief. And it is a belief that we learned early on as kids. And that belief is this: you are responsible for how other people feel. Now, a belief is not a fact and it's not true. It's just something that we have heard repeatedly, and then we go on to keep on repeating until we believe that it is indeed true. And this, I honestly think, starts incredibly young when we're tiny, tiny tots. If you've got siblings, right, you may have been told to share your toys because you don't want your sibling to be upset. In other words, even as a tiny toddler, you are being given the message that it's your job to manage somebody else in your family's feelings. Things like go and give grandma a kiss when you just feel, yeah, I don't want to do that, right? Her breath smells, or she's all whiskery, or whatever it is. But or don't upset him, right? Don't upset him. Things like say thank you properly, don't be rude, be polite. Think about other people's feelings. Now, I know that these things sound polite and nice, and we think it's about teaching our kids manners. I understand why adults say these things, but, and this is a big but, what slowly happens is that children learn my discomfort matters far less than keeping other people comfortable. In other words, their feelings are here and mine are down here. Other people's feelings are more important than mine is the overriding message. And that is where we get massive problems then as children become young adults. Teens is a very difficult time anyway. Teens, young adulthood, and then into relationships. And that becomes a problem because it's now become your identity. So we have adults that are literally spending hours a day over-apologising, overthinking text, over-explaining things, rereading messages, trying to predict other people's reactions, saying yes when actually they mean no, suppressing what they actually want. And that means avoiding honesty, because honesty feels dangerous. And many people may have been told that being honest is rude, and you can't be rude. Now, this is where we've got to recognize that people are not trying to manipulate when they're over-explaining and over-apologizing. It's something about feeling emotionally safe through managing other people's emotions. And it gets reinforced consistently. Think about it, through films, family dynamics all of the time, through workplaces, through social media, through what we're actually watching going on around us between other people and in their relationships and conversations. And if you watched people getting punished for being honest, if you saw friends, family members, other people in films being rewarded for being compliant or easy or agreeable, well, the message loud and clear is keep the peace, stay nice, be careful, stay useful. Don't actually say what you mean or what you want. And that, my lovelies, is how you become completely disconnected from yourself, because your focus is permanently external. And tell me if this feels familiar for you, maybe multiple times on a daily basis. I wonder what they're thinking. How are they feeling? Did I upset them? Will they still like me? Am I too much? Was I too blunt? Oh my God, should I have worded that differently? And how much time are you spending on those thoughts? And be honest, because it's only you now. I don't know what you're thinking, and I don't know what your answer is. This is about you. Ask yourself, how long do you spend on those thoughts? And then, alternatively, how much attention and time goes on to thinking, what do I actually think? What do I actually want? What do I genuinely feel? What's the comparison? Is it equal? Do you think about yourself hardly at all? Do you think about other people all the time? Only you know. But this is where it gets really interesting, because years ago when I was in rehab, and it's coming up now, can't quite believe it, to my 21st sober anniversary. So 21 years ago, in 2005, I was in rehab. And I remember somebody saying, and this was in a group discussion, and I really couldn't get it at first. They said, people pleasing is selfish. Now, this was not actually one of the people in the group. It was one of the staff who was running the group. And I couldn't get my head around it. And I just thought I hated it, because I'm like, how can people pleasing be a selfish or a negative thing? Because surely it means that you're caring about other people. And isn't that what I was taught, to care about other people's feelings? And that makes me a nice person, and it's good manners. And most of us are caring people. But what actually stopped me in my tracks, and I didn't ask this question because I was too nervous to, believe it or not, I was too nervous to ask questions back then, but I was very good at listening. And other people did have the courage to ask the questions that I wanted to ask. And so the lady who was taking the group was asked, what do you actually mean by that? Help me understand it. And this is what she shared. And I really want you to take this on board. People pleasing is usually driven by self-protection. Now, it doesn't make it a bad thing, and it doesn't make it a negative. It's not manipulation, and it's not in any way, shape, or form something that you, in inverted commas, shouldn't do. But recognize it's a form of protection. It protects from you feeling rejected, disapproved of, unsafe, from conflict, which absolutely everybody who is neurodivergent or is a highly sensitive person, which I shared last week, I am definitely a highly sensitive person, which is probably why I understand neurodivergent people and rejection sensitivity dysphoria to the extent that I do, even though I don't have a neurodivergent brain. Conflict is something that we want to avoid at all costs, but also being misunderstood. It protects. So people pleasing is protection from being misunderstood, from feeling abandoned, and from feeling judged. We don't want to feel judged. We don't want to feel we've got it wrong. We don't want to be criticized, and we don't want to be disapproved of. And I think this is where we need a lot more compassion and nuance in these conversations, because for many people, people pleasing, especially for neurodivergent people, is a survival strategy. It's an adaptation, and it helps you to survive. And if you have got ADHD, or if you are on the autism spectrum, or both, then you'll know exactly what I mean. If you're struggling with rejection sensitivity, it almost feels like somebody is punching you in the stomach or stabbing you in the heart. It's a physical, it's painful. And so it makes sense that your nervous system is constantly scanning for signs that somebody's annoyed with you or disappointed with you. And it may be that you're reading body language and facial cues. It's not necessarily the words that they're saying. And then you adapt. You adapt yourself to try and stay safe. And then this is what we kind of learn to be known as masking. You learn how to keep people happy. You learn how to keep things calm. You don't trigger conflict. You avoid at all costs upsetting people or saying the wrong thing or disappointing anybody, because rejection just feels enormous. So this is not about me shaming people and saying that people pleasing is bad. It's about understanding the pattern compassionately, but also it's about recognizing that there is a big cost, because eventually, and this is the bit that I really want you to take on board, you can lose yourself completely trying to avoid discomfort. And this is the thing that came up with both of my clients. I'm not going to go into their details in their history, but they will go to whatever lengths possible to feel comfortable. They will do anything to avoid feeling uncomfortable. And yet we can only grow and progress and be the person that we truly want to be if we consistently get uncomfortable. And so this is where the ego comes into the conversation, because we're trying to avoid discomfort. Now, when people hear the word ego, there's so much goes through their heads, but usually we have made, again, thanks to social media, thanks to social conditioning, we kind of associate the word ego with arrogance or excessive focus on self. And this is the uncomfortable bit that people don't want to hear. So I'm going to invite you, hear harder, hear more, because a lot of people pleasing does revolve around self. It revolves around, how am I being perceived? What do they think of me? How do they approve of me? Do they approve of me? Have I upset them? Do they still even like me? And so internally, there's a conflict, because the brain is revolving around me, 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 me. But externally, that looks deeply caring. And this is the bit that's important. This is why it becomes so mentally exhausting. Because you're trying to control something that actually you can't control: another human being's feelings, their emotions, their perceptions, their interpretations, their reactions, their language, their behavior. They're not yours to control, but you're trying to. And this is also where resentment then starts to build. And this is something that is difficult because it is a nuance, and you have to really understand this. And this is why I said you might need to listen to this again, because eventually what people tend to say is, yeah, but I do everything for everybody else. And underneath, there is an unconscious hope that if I manage everybody properly, then maybe somebody will manage me back. Because what we're looking for is safety and security and comfort. And comfort means that you're safe and you don't have to worry about being criticized or rejected. But when you don't necessarily get back what you hope to get back, there's a sense of resentment. It's exhausting. You often feel massively anxious because you're consistently overthinking and ruminating. And this can lead to turning to other things to help you to somehow feel better about yourself, which could be food, it could be alcohol, it could be self-harming, it could be medication, it could be gambling, any of the things that will just help you somehow either switch this stuff off or dial it down or just help you to feel a different emotion. Now, often people snap after years of being nice because the nervous system is just exhausted. It's just literally shattered from the constant monitoring and the constant emotional threat. And honestly, I think one of the biggest parts of adulthood that nobody teaches is this. Other people are allowed to feel how they feel without you collapsing because of it. Now, I know a lot of people have spoken to me about having read Mel Robbins' book about the Let Them theory, right? And this is not new stuff at all. Have I read the book? Yes. Was I blown away by it? Well, no, because I already know this stuff. But I don't think it necessarily went into how do you handle and how do you learn to be able to sit with the feelings that you're going to get when you are not, or when you are no longer trying to constantly manage in minute detail other people's feelings and emotions. Now, I'm just going to skate back a little bit because I know that when I work with my ADHD and neurodivergent clients and we talk about this stuff, we mention, like I mentioned, that there's an unconscious hope or wish that in some way your kindness will be reciprocated. A lot of them say, actually, no, that's not true. That is not what they are looking for. It is allowing them to focus on other people's needs that helps them to not focus on themselves and what they are not doing and that constant criticizing voice that's in their head. So I think it's important that I do say that, because a lot of people will definitely say, well, I'm not doing it to get anything back. But they will also say, though, that oftentimes there can be feelings of resentment because it does feel like you are always giving. And it's not that you're expecting to be given back, but just some thanks or recognition or just something that helps you to feel worthy and, again, safe and recognized and seen and heard is important. So what do we do then? Because a lot of people think it's an either or and it's an extreme. Again, social conditioning, and it's not about going from one extreme to the other. It's not about being arrogant or cold or blunt or selfish. That is not what we're looking at. But it means that recognizing you can have compassion for other people without feeling that you have to take responsibility for somebody else's thoughts or feelings or emotional state. And this is probably one of the most powerful things that we can, if we are a grandparent or a parent, teach our young people. And we need to be really aware, if we are a grandparent or a parent or an aunt of younger people, if you are around young children, young adults, we need to help them and you to be aware of changing the language so that we stop reinforcing this belief that they are responsible for someone else's feelings. One of the most powerful things I think that a person can learn is this: I can survive somebody misunderstanding me. Now, we can say those words, but you have to actually find the evidence, and your body needs evidence that you can do what you say you're going to do. So the only way you're going to get the evidence that you can survive somebody misunderstanding you is to do it. And the problem therein lies with this: most people are terrified of doing that, of finding that out. So they continue to mask, to shapeshift, if you like, to over-explain, to put on a performance, to manage, to appease, to make themselves a little bit softer, a bit nicer, a bit kinder. And this is where we realize that we are trying to earn emotional safety through behavior. But long term, that equals self-abandonment. And when you abandon yourself, you will create far more suffering. What do I mean by that? Well, maybe you can recognize this. How often are you managing perceptions instead of expressing the truth? Oh, I think that they'll know what I mean. Or if I just say this, it'll sound okay. In other words, if I just say the thing that sounds good, not the thing that's actually the truth, I will be perceived as a nice person. They'll still like me. How often are you editing yourself to avoid discomfort? This is a big one. I know that a lot of my clients do this all of the time. If I say it like this, then I'll feel comfortable, and hopefully they will also feel comfortable. It might not be the truth, it might not be what you actually want, but it avoids discomfort. How often are you trying to earn approval by abandoning yourself? So the classic one is saying yes when actually every part of you doesn't want to do the thing, but you find yourself saying yes anyway. It's easy, it's comfortable, you want to be approved of. And this used to be a big one that I did. And then I would spend hours in rumination and anxiety and just overthinking how the hell I could get out of the thing that I'd said yes to. Because it goes back to what I shared last week. When we take the easy option, life becomes hard. When we take the harder option to start with, life becomes easier, because that harder option actually then becomes more of our normal. But when you keep on saying yes, when actually you don't want to do the thing, this is you absolutely trying to earn approval by abandoning yourself. And so we've got to remember that you can only change when you get awareness. And the goal here is for me to help you to become aware of what are you actually doing, and understanding that you're doing it not because you're selfish, but there is ego in there, but you're trying to protect yourself. And you're doing it at the cost of your own identity. And this is causing you to feel exhausted and disconnected from who you actually are. And I have clients who are neurodivergent who genuinely have said, sometimes I don't actually know who I am. I really don't know. And this is part of the reason why. So before we can change, we have to have awareness. But the goal isn't for you to become less caring. That's not what it is. The goal maybe is to become more honest to yourself, about yourself, more honest with other people about what you actually think and feel. Because when you can start to do that, you can start to tolerate a little bit more discomfort without making you disappear in the process. Now, as I say, this is one of the topics that comes up over and over again, because this stuff is so hardwired. It is so ingrained in society. And I want you to have a little game, if you like, because I like to gamify things. Just notice for the next 24 to 48 hours, how many times you observe, either on a film or reading an article or on a TV program or even on an advert or on social media or within your friends or work environment, how often in that 24 to 48 hour period do you notice people saying one thing but actually recognize that they're not happy and comfortable? You know that they're just saying it to be nice, to be polite, to perform, to keep the peace. They offer to help somebody, even though you know that they've got a workload that is ridiculous and they don't really have the time, but they offer anyway. Notice this stuff going on around you. So I'm not going to make it all about you. If you are in a position where you actually do want to do this for yourself and you want to get the awareness, then ask yourself those questions. I will put them in the show notes and in the description, right? Look at those questions and be honest, because ultimately radical honesty is the only way you can have true full awareness of what you are doing and understanding that it's not because you are selfish, but there is an element of me in there because you're trying to stay safe and you're trying to do it through something that is actually not in your control. And that is why it is so exhausting, because other people are in charge of their thoughts and their feelings and their reactions and their perceptions and their interpretations of things. And other people do not think the same way as you. Now, if you take anything away from this episode, make it that. Because there's an air of arrogance, and this is the bit I did not want to hear in rehab, but I had to hear it anyway. There's an air of arrogance and grandiosity if we think that everybody thinks like we do. They don't. They can't, because they didn't live your life. They haven't got your genetics. They haven't got your parents or your aunties or grandparents. They don't live in the same environment. They didn't go to the same school as you. They don't speak the same way as you. They didn't have the same initial programming as you. They haven't got the same culture. People do not all think the same way. And when we can let go of that and recognize that just because I think one way about this doesn't make it right or the only way. There's a lot of arrogance is around us worrying about what other people think and feel. And I know you don't want to hear that, because that's where it's linked to the ego nuance. And yet every part of you is screaming, but no, I just don't want to feel criticized, or I don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And so I'm going to say this loud and clear. Other people's feelings don't belong to you. Your feelings do. So have that awareness. Where are you trying to manage other people's feelings? How often and how much time in any 24 to 48 hours are you spending on doing that? And if you weren't consistently doing that, if you were actually looking at your own thoughts and your own feelings and reconnecting back to yourself, how do you think that would help you in terms of energy, confidence, and just who you are being? I'd love your comments on this, folks. If you've not already subscribed, please do. Give me a thumbs up, give me a like. If you think that this episode is going to be helpful to somebody else, then please do pass it on to them, because this is a topic that is going to keep on cropping up over and over again unless collectively we all start to change our language, to change our programming, to change that socially conditioned narrative that does not serve anybody but does create exhaustion, anxiety, depression. We can all do this if we work together to work on this stuff, to help all of us to be better humans. And I'm going to leave you with this, as I always do. We only have one life, as far as we know, and one body. So please look after it, because it is looking after you. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.